Good morning, everybody. Can everyone hear me all right? Perfect. Good morning. Welcome. I'm Ashley Hazeltine. I'm the president with the Greater Derry Londonderry Chamber of Commerce. So thank you all so much for joining us this morning. Just a couple brief remarks before we get started. First off, thank you to Bev Donovan from the Town of Derry Economic Development team. We have been working with her to put this event on, as well as Stu Arnett with ADG as well. So thank you. And then also a special thank you to Enterprise Bank, who is our presenting sponsor this morning. The Chamber of Commerce, to give you a little bit of background, actually encompasses 8 towns in this area. In addition to Derry and Londonderry, we also cover Atkinson, Auburn, Chester, Hampstead, Sandown, and Windham, as well as anybody that has business interests in the region. So if you are new to this area or you're coming in to learn about this area for the first time, please feel free to use us as a resource. You're welcome to attend any of our events if you're looking to make additional connections in the region. We would love to have you. And without further ado, I would like to welcome Peter Reno from Enterprise Bank to share a few words.
Good morning, everybody. I don't know, I saw Scott earlier. Is Scott around? Hey, there he is. Absolutely love being here at Tupelo. Much prefer to be here when Peter Frampton's here or Lone Star, but seeing you people is just as equally a pleasure. Scott's done such a wonderful job with this facility, hasn't he? And it's been a real privilege Sure. It's been a real privilege to assist you with it on behalf of Enterprise Bank. And if you haven't seen a show here, it's a wonderful time. I'm very excited to hear about the topics today. We're going to hear a lot about economic development. You're going to hear about job creation. But I was thinking about this. Economic development is not an end in and of itself. Instead, it's a means to an end. The true end are better communities, better quality of life for individuals. And that's really what we need to focus on as we hear about these details today. I like to say to my bosses, it gets them a little nervous at Enterprise Bank, that I like to be a creative lender. They get a little nervous about that. But what that means is that we really try to maximize our relationships with economic development agencies to make dreams come true, to make economic development occur. Our work with the SBA, with the Business Finance Authority, with the Community Loan Fund, with the Rockingham Economic Development Corporation. We love to be able to maximize products like low-income housing tax credits, new market tax credits, tax-exempt bonds. All of these are ways to increase economic development in partnership with other organizations. And it's something we certainly at the bank enjoy. And opportunity zones, we're hoping, are the next aspect for that. So like you, I'm very excited to hear about it. Just a little bit about our agenda. In a moment, I'm going to introduce Stu Arnett from ADG, who's going to give us an overview on this. And then afterwards, there'll be time for Q&A. Sound good? All right, great. So it's my pleasure to bring on up Stu Arnett. He's going to give us an opportunity zone overview, and Stu is with ADG LLC. Stu? Oh, there he is. Thank you.
Thanks for hosting us, Peter.
No, it's a pleasure.
Good morning. Peter, I have a treat for you. Part of my presentation is I am going to do a Peter Crampton impersonation here. So, no, I have a, we're fortunate that our son is a professional musician, and one of the treats about being here today is I beat him on the stage at Tupelo Hall. So that'll make him jealous for a long time. Good morning. Super to have you all here so early. Again, echo the thoughts about the facility. Wow. And the Chamber for doing such a great job putting us together. All the materials have been great. Everyone's been wonderful to work with. Everybody for being here early in the morning on, I don't want to jinx it, might be the first spring day of the year. It's out there. So, yeah, as Peter mentioned, I'm going to do sort of an overview so people who don't know an opportunity zone from an enterprise zone from all those other acronyms that we use can get a sense of what it is and what it isn't. Then as we said, we're going to have a break and then do Q&A. You'll notice that there's a microphone here with a long cord. So even if you're in the back, we can still find you. So we hope to get some Q&A from the audience and have you have a chance to ask those questions. So let's get going here. So the focus today is going to be on the issue of being investment ready. And the whole opportunity zone has a lot of churning going around it. If you go on Google and search it, you'll find thousands of articles. All kinds of large investors are putting out position papers and such. But our focus today is on how the Derry area and the surrounding area can get and ready for investment versus the intricacies of the tax laws or something like that. Hopefully it's more information you can use, and as things evolve, you'll figure out more. So it's about getting ready. Who we are, ADG is in Concord, headquartered in Concord. We're in our 13th year. It replaced an organization that was founded in 1986, we're hopefully mission-driven. We believe every community can have a better future, and our specific mission is to help them through smart planning and development solutions, both discover that, the planning side, and then implement it, because we really like being project managers and getting something through to finish. Those are some of the development techniques or practices. And then the planning ones, master plans, recreation plans, zoning redos, that sort of thing. I've had the pleasure of being Bev's predecessor, was here for 2 years as the contracted development part-time director when Gary Stenhouse was here. And then for 4+ years, we've been working with the town of Londonderry doing both planning and development projects. And did a little work for the town of Chester when the college closed about some options about reusing it. So I'm very familiar with this specific zone and a lot of the good people here, which is kind of a lot of fun. And I highlighted this one area here of repurposing unutilized places. That's really what we enjoy doing the most, is finding a reuse, a better purpose for sites, communities, neighborhoods that are undervalued. So that's what's fun for us. Okay. Getting investment ready, we're going to talk about two major categories, those that are selling and then those are buying, to make it a little bit too simplistic, but that's what it is. And the ones that are selling are the community, in this case Derry, or the state or the region that's trying to attract investment, be investment ready. And then the second sellers, potential sellers, are owners of either real estate sites, real estate buildings, and something that's not gotten as much notice as the real estate side is, this is also eligible for operating businesses. So operating businesses that are located in the zone are eligible to receive Opportunity Zone investment, just like real estate is. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means, because it's different. And as I mentioned, IRS is still working some things out, and they just came out with a whole bunch of new regs about investing in the businesses, about what's it mean to be in a zone. Does it mean your headquarters is there, all your employees are there, your business is there, and so that's kind of getting clarified. But I think one of the opportunities here, and we will use that word a lot, is that existing businesses also have the potential of attracting equity. On the buyer side, the investor with opportunity funds must be what's called a qualified investment fund. It can't be you or I as individuals. It has to be through a qualified opportunity fund. The qualification process right now is pretty simple. It's pretty much a self-verification. And then going forward, it has to have, depending on which door you go through, either 70 or 90% of its investments in a zone. And that's pretty much the criteria now. But it has to be a fund, and there are some third-party, I just can't call myself a fund this afternoon and give myself money. And then the key here is getting investors to say, gee, I think I'm going to put money in that fund versus this fund versus that fund, or do something at all. So 4 perspectives we're going to kind of try to quickly talk about. Just a little background on buyer beware. This is one of a gazillion articles that have come out about opportunity zones. This is the Realtor National Magazine, but just a couple quotes. No one should be doing a deal if it doesn't stand on its own. And we'll come back to that. Opportunity zone is not magic. It's certainly attractive, but if it's not a deal that can stand on its own, it's still not a deal that stands on its own. And it's not for someone who doesn't have patience to do research and be sure it really is an opportunity. And we'll talk about what that research might be. And it's also patience in that the longer you stay with the investment, the greater the benefit is for the tax benefits. So again, it's a very attractive tool, I think, but it's not going to make something bad turn into something good. Okay, different types of funds, because this usually comes up. And from what we can see, and this is coming from our friends at Hinckley Allen who provided this for our last presentation, it can be a single asset, single fund, meaning it's just for housing or just for retail. It can be multiple. It can be a real estate investment trust structure. It can be LLCs. And also things are called community-sponsored funds, where people in a community like this area, create their own fund to reinvest back into their backyard. And I think one of the things we were pointing out, I think, is that smaller non-urban towns with smaller parcels will be harder to attract the large institutional investors. Think about the United Bank of Switzerland, the Merrill Lynch's, the national funds. There's 8,700 districts in the country, including downtown Chicago, LA, Miami, you name it. So the institutional funds, we think, and others obviously think, are going to be attracted to larger investments. So the zones like Derry, I think we ought to be thinking of less institutional and more regional, local funds as the potential source. And then, again, those are also more likely to be taken advantage of by a local community development fund if that's what makes sense. One of the things about Opportunity Zone that's come up is, like anything new, we do a lot of speaking about tax increment finance districts and other things, enterprise zones, and oftentimes there's a lot of conceptions of what they are that are not necessarily right. And then, so let's spend a couple minutes and just talk about what a zone is. It's a federal tax code enactment. That's the only place it appears. It's not a state thing. It's not a local thing. It's a change in the IRS tax laws. It is for and only for fixed locations. So if you're in it, you're in it. If you're out of it, you're out of it. And I haven't heard anybody yet say we need to have it okay for people who are also near it or close to it. And I haven't heard anybody say let's adjust the boundaries. Very quickly, the boundaries came about by a formula, I think, of 5 factors: poverty, brownfields, housing age, some of the things. At the national level, in the legislation, run it through the big computer. Let's see, 20,000-ish zones were, and zones are all census tracts. That's why sometimes you'll see strange lines, because they're exactly a census tract. So 20,000 some were identified. Each governor was able to designate 25% of the eligible zones for their state. That process happened last year. And fortunately, I think the census tract here in Derry is one of those. But where it is where it is, and it's not somewhere else. It's all about private funding looking for return on investment. So unlike a lot of the programs that you're used to in community economic development, there's no acronyms for low mod income. There's no acronyms for threshold incomes. There's no acronyms for Davis-Bacon. This is all private money pursuing private deals and pursuing a return on investment. So what are the tax benefits? And this is going to be the shortest explanation of it than you're going to get, because they can spin and spin and spin. Basically, there's 2 types of tax benefits. One is deferred taxes. Instead of paying taxes IRS now, you can pay them later. That's always good, because you can use your money now until you have to pay them. Those don't go down, but they, per se. Then if you hold the investments for certain periods of time, you can either reduce those deferred taxes by 5 or 10% of the gain. And then the third tax reduction is all the appreciation after a certain date is tax-free. So there's a deferral, and there's 3 tax reduction possibilities, especially if you're a patient investor. So that's why, again, why real estate kind of keeps coming back up. So deferral and reduction, and they're significant. So why is the Treasury forsaking income, which is in essence a grant, but it's a reverse grant, which is that there is a public benefit is to be derived by investing in otherwise underinvested areas. So this is specifically designed to say, those areas of town that have been sort of skipped over and or need more and they're not getting enough market investment, that's what this is meant to encourage. It's meant to encourage people to say, gee, I typically wouldn't look at this census tract in Derry, but now that it's on the radar screen, it's worth a look. And this is one point that it's one of the few times I think I'm going to make a crystal balling here a little bit. It is unusually unencumbered with government requirements for the investments. The other program that's somewhat similar to this is new market tax credits. It's the closest one I can think of, which is like this. Even that, though, has a lot more requirements as to eligibility, but there is no requirement that a certain amount of jobs be produced, and there's no requirement that the benefit be directed to any population, veterans, anything like that. And if you read the trade press, there's already some pushback to that before it's even started. And just to touch the third rail politics for a second, this was passed by a Republican Congress. You now have a Democratic Congress in place, so there's going to be a presidential campaign coming up. So I would presume somewhere someone's going to pick up on this and say this is a rich man's thing, and then someone else is going to say no, it isn't, and we're going. But to give an example, a trade pub I read last week, which I think was, it was an urban affairs thing, but they pointed out that, as to give an example, a former governor, Chris Christie of New Jersey, has established with other people a qualified opportunity fund. And they, like most funds, say what their target is, housing, whatever it is. Well, one of their targets is self-storage facilities. And you can imagine how strongly that goes over when someone says, where's the economic development advantage of self-storage facilities in these districts? I'm going to guess that's what I'm saying, it's unusually encumbered for now, that as time goes on, you're going to see pressure for people to say, and you must show certain benefits and document those. They've already asked the Treasury Department to start documenting benefits. I don't know how IRS would know that, but I think it's my long way of saying what is unusually unencumbered today may not always be unusually unencumbered. Okay, what it is not. It is not a grant or a loan program of the state, of the federal government, of the town of Derry, of the Regional Development Corporation. It is none of those. As much as you need to go see Bev about everything and anything, right? If your water gets turned off, if dogs are barking next door, Bev is the person to see no matter what. Trash pickup, she loves it. She loves that. I have her home number. I can give you that later. She doesn't have the ability to say yes or no to any Opportunity Zone Fund investment. It requires no government yes or no other than the typical zoning land use permits, business permits that you would for any other business. It's not a tax break that works for everyone. It is designed specifically for what's called unrealized capital gains. And very quickly, a capital gain is a gain of selling a real asset for a price higher than you bought it for. So we're most familiar with it, most of us, for selling our house, hopefully at a higher price than we bought it for 20 years ago. We just finished tax season. Those of you who had a capital gain on a stock sale, you know what I'm talking about. This is a little unusual, unlike some other programs, that the capital gain can be on anything you sold. It can be on a racehorse. It can be on intellectual property. It can be on your baseball card collection. So if you can show that you bought $1 million worth of baseball cards, which is interesting, and then sold it for $1.5 million, that $500,000 is the capital gain, and it's not realized until you have the money in your hand. So it allows people to have a gain that they haven't yet reported because they haven't cashed out, they haven't realized it, to take that and now put that gain into this fund and then defer, reduce with that gain. If you don't have a capital gain, this isn't your program. It's not a change to any land use regulation. It's not a change of any municipal zoning district. It's not a change of any property rights. It has no eminent domain taking right-of-way issue. Again, if there is no approval process from anyone at the municipal level. It's not forever. It does have a sunset. It does have a date that you have to pay the first gain, and it has some pretty hard deadlines. So that's why you'll see a lot of people moving pretty fast. And it's not a requirement of any municipality to do anything. They don't have to participate at all. They can say, hey, that's nice. We have a zone in our town, and good luck to everybody. And so there's no requirement that the town participate other than I think originally and maybe concurring with the fact that if they were eligible for one, they would say that's okay. And then I think, we'll say it a couple times, it's not yet well understood because, especially the tax law side, there's still advisory opinions coming out from IRS. There's another large one that came out about 2 weeks ago. And they're asking people for comments, and they're getting a skillion of them. But the IRS has said, it's kind of interesting, that if you make a decision today, going back to January 1st, based on good faith of what we were telling you then, we'll abide by that. So while they're still working on it, the program is live. So qualified opportunity funds can be investing, and unrealized capital gains can be happening and are happening today. Okay, we'll keep going, or do we have anybody who's really jumping up and down yet? Okay. Yeah, we're going to, in other words, I'll get to a couple more slides and then we'll break up for questions. Okay. Okay, so where are these mysterious zones? There's 27 in the state. This is the state official map. And as you expect, there's big parcels in the North Country. Those, by the way, are census tracts. This just shows you the difference in population density, because the census tract is basically the same number of people no matter how big or small it is. So if you look carefully, you'll see the Derry tract on there. We'll show you the map here in Derry in just a second. There are some areas that are not on there you would think would be. There's some areas that are a little bit of a surprise. We were at an earlier presentation for this. Bev and I were on the panel with the New Hampshire commercial brokers, and one of the brokers was, how in the heck did Durham get on there? And so we looked at the map, and it's the census tract that includes all the dormitories. And what are the income levels of people who live in dormitories? So it qualified as a eligible zone. So you get some strange things like that. Again, will those be adjusted going down the road? Every federal program I've ever seen has been adjusted. And typically what happens is they add to it versus pull it away from anybody, because nobody wants to be saying no to people. So you might see more zones as time goes on, but I haven't heard anybody say that out loud yet at a national level, because they're still trying to figure out this one. Okay, this is the town of Derry per its census tracts. The census tract 3500. I bet you a lot of you didn't know your census tract number, did you? So nor did I. And it's the peach color one coming in from in the middle. It's the long finger of peach. And if you look to the southwest corner, you'll see 93 just barely catches a little piece of it. Broadway is the northwest border. 28 runs through it, and say it louder, better. Kendall Pond Road. Okay, all right. So that's the district. Some of your competing or fellow opportunity zones in the area. This is Manchester's, and it, let's see. So this is Commercial Street. This is Elm, from Manchester Elm. So it has Eversource Guard coming all the way down through the Newmarket Basket and the Cat Stadium and the parking lot, and then a couple blocks back to Chestnut, and then down to the river. So in Manchester, it really is its downtown business development district. We had a presentation on this, and some people in Manchester were going, well, there's not much open land, but there's a lot of potential for redevelopment here. So let me go to the next one. This is Nashua. Oh, that's right. This is Nashua. And if you can see, Nashua has, and again, these strange lines are census tracts. And the census tracts are developed they're reviewed every 10 years, and they're moved to make sure that the same number of people are inside them. So 99% of the time, we don't ever look at census tracts. They're just there. But you can see Nashua, again, has a big piece of its urban core. So Derry, Manchester, Nashua, I would think that, now I'm doing a conjecture here, that if you're a fund looking at southern New Hampshire, you might tend to look at all three. And so I would suggest as a strategy, think about how those three complement and or compete against each other. I think you want to, if someone's going to be doing something on Elm Street in Manchester, that's a different market than your track here in Derry, which is a different one from Nashua. But they're all so close to each other, and I think in the marketplace, people identify them close together. I think it's good to sort of have that in mind. Okay, so that was the intro. So the point today is let's get investment ready. Let's be ready for this opportunity. There's that word again. Before things either get hard or they jump over and find other markets that are ready. And if you go online, you'll see a lot of cities and towns and states being very aggressive with websites and going to trade shows and saying, this is why you should come to Cincinnati and all those things. So, so why do it? Why bother? So these are sort of my thoughts on this. For the community, it can mean tax-based growth. We are so reliant on property taxes that a real estate redevelopment and development incentive is a good thing for us because it builds up either multifamily, residential, or commercial, and both of those are tax plus places. Both of those pay a lot more taxes than they use for services. Being that it can be a source of equity for existing businesses, it can help existing businesses succeed. It is a way of putting money into blighted areas that have not received it before. And when we worked in Derry before, I remember we had a lot of work we were trying to do on the brownfield sites, and there were some tough housing stuff around there. Just couldn't justify ways of bringing private investment in to clean some of that stuff up, and maybe this will help. And then this is going to be kind of, I think, a key thing is, does it drive investment to non-opportunity zone areas? Or is it going to be, taking from Peter to put something into Paul? And I think it's going to be important for all of us to be thinking about, if you attract investor interest, making sure that the interest is spread to areas, not just the zone, so that it stands to benefit everybody. For the property owner, your potential of your value of your property goes up. I have been asked, by the way, does that mean your assessments go up? And that's a decision of your assessor, but typically an assessment doesn't go up until the market value shows that it goes up. Some assessors are a little more aggressive than others. So that would mean, in layman's term, that means they probably wouldn't put it at a higher level until it sells at a higher level. So, but that's final decision, that's your assessor, but it's a question. And we have had people say that, in fact, the attorney presented the last time we were together said that people were adding 20% on the value of their properties right away. And he said nationally that's a real non-starter because people see, they see that as what it is. That's just an artificial jacking. And remember, there's 8,700 zones and how many hundred parcels in each one of those. So it's not like there's a scarcity of projects to go after. So I think it certainly adds to the value, but I would caution about saying automatically, here's my property at 150% it was worth a year ago. I think one of the real benefits for private property owners who are not in real estate trusts and stuff, it'll probably bring a better pre-qualified buyer. So you're not going to be wasting as much time talking to people who really are just tire kickers. It's the incentive of the fund to move and make good investments sooner than later. So when people are looking, hopefully they'll be more qualified and credible. You don't have to waste a lot of time and then find out that the brother-in-law really didn't like the wife after all, and they decided not to do all those things that people do locally. For an operating business in a zone, it means a potential of new equity coming into the business, and with equity, some oversight. The question is how much you're going to give away. It's important to note for business owners that the investment from Opportunity zones must be equity, can't be an IOU, so you can't load them up with a debt. And the equity must be for cash, and it's very clear in the regs. So you can't come up to somebody and say, well, give me 20% of your company and I'll give you intellectual property, or I'll give you, my client list or something. It's got to be cash, and it can't be an IOU. And so sometimes that's exactly what a small business could use, is an infusion of equity. And then the question comes up, well, how much am I giving up and what kind of return on investment? But I'm not aware of any other program that incentivizes equity investments into small business. All the Small Business Administration, new market tax credits, all those UDAGs, CDAGs, revolving funds, they're all loans. They're all either loans or loan enhancements. This is unique in that saying equity, which is ownership. For buyers, I think there's two issues there. Again, is the investor and the fund itself. Why should they get ready? Why are they jumping in, really jumping in, being created very fast? All the big guys have one now. Number one, they're going to get fees. I mean, they're going to get paid to do something here. The second one is if you have a client who is in your fund now and you're not going to do this, you stand at risk of losing them, and also you have a chance of bringing somebody in who was not with your fund. So I think it's going to become sort of every major fund's going to want to say they have a qualified opportunity fund as part of their portfolio. And then again, if they're in the business holding assets, especially real estate, for up to 10 years, they get another tax kick. So it will reward funds that are patient with their holdings. And then for the investor, if the person has a capitalized gain, again, significant tax deferral, reduction of the capital gains. The appreciation over time is rewarded without going too much into it. But in addition to the reductions after 10 years, any of the appreciation from that point, when sold, all of that capital gains is tax-free. So if you can be patient, your gain on that property or business is tax-free for that appreciation after that initial period. And then one of the things that we're mission-driven about helping better communities, is we also hope that people are also looking for some social impact investing. And I think, especially when you're talking about local funds, that's not something you want to disregard. I think people still want to know that they're doing something valuable with their funds if they can, versus necessarily doing a self-storage unit. So to the degree this is a way of the social investor also getting involved, and a lot of unrealized capital gains are held by wealthy people who would like to do some impact investing, then I think that's a market that you may want to be thinking about as an additional why here. Okay, so the four perspectives, again, are the municipality, the owner, the fund, and the investor. So this gives you a sense of what here in Derry has been done. Downtown Derry, you're proposing some zoning changes. That would be, you can see what they are here. You know them probably better than I do because they've been advertised. The idea, again, is to make them more palatable and have the town be more investor ready. You've got some zoning changes in the works for commercial zone number 4. And then within the master plan, you've got some statements that if someone's looking to invest in the area are encouraging because they're saying, gee, the town is looking ahead and it does look like long-term, this is a place we want to take a look at. So that's an example of what is a specific example of what's being done here. But as I mentioned, different communities are doing different things, and this is something you can do without touching your budget. For people who own sites, buildings, or businesses, the 4 kind of things I'm saying I think would be helpful to be investment ready or to be timely, to find ways to lessen the risk of the investor, to make sure the investor knows that the community is offering a welcome. Again, there's a lot of places they can go, so why go someplace where they're going to be run around for 6 months while they're trying to beat deadlines? And then again, know your competition and unique attributes. And I think I'm going to skip over some of the specifics here unless you look at them as I talk. But a couple, as I mentioned, don't look at this as a mega bucks if you have a property in the site. Be realistic. this is still a investment for somebody, so to the degree that you can say, here is a strong business plan that goes behind it, here is a strong appraisal, here is a clear offering. Again, it doesn't waive the rules of a good sale by, it just makes it a little bit more attractive. I had the pleasure when I was Economic Development Director of the state of overseeing the state recruitment guys. And it drove them nuts when a community would say, oh, come bring our business to our town. And then they got there and found out that the person would say, well, what's the deal? What's the, is this available? When can I get in? Well, the owner hasn't really said that for sure. Or the owner wants to know who you are before they decide to sell. And that's just a kiss of death. Again, there's so much competition to the degree that if you are an owner of either a business or a site, the more ready you are to make a credible, clean, unconditioned commitment, the better. Okay, so what to do? First, identify the sites. That's easy. We've done that already. Second, it's kind of maybe a little counterintuitive, but understand what the community wants as far as its goals and objectives, so that if a fund is specifically designed to, I'll keep picking on storage lots, storage units, and you really see that area as being something that would revitalize downtown by bringing in a mix of housing and commercial, know that and be able to say that so you don't waste someone's time and they don't waste yours. So understand what your goals and objectives are for that area. Get the sites under control, not meaning what I just said. Before something is listed as available, is it really available? Is it listable? Is it either listed with a commercial broker, or is it at the point where someone can say, yes, this is, if you do this, we'll do this, versus I want to think about it and I need to check with my Uncle Charlie in Miami and let me come back to you in 6 months. Also, we would suggest assemble a development team. Doesn't have to be anything real formal, but on the permit side, on the owner side, on the banking side, the broker side, just people who are comparing notes. What you heard last, Bev and I talked this week. She just came back from a workshop. It was more up to speed on 2 or 3 things than I was. It could just be an informal team that says, how do we make good things happen? And then alignments. Find out who wants to sell, who wants to invest. Find out who the fund managers are who are looking at this part of the area. And then we're suggesting also align with other opportunity zone communities so that you're sort of presenting a package instead of having a fund have to go, where's Derry, and is it the same one? So understand what Manchester and Nashua and others are doing. Okay, for investors with unrealized capital gains, I think this is one of the few statements I hope I make a couple times. Remember that bad deals are still bad, regardless of the zone being there or not. But a good deal can become a great deal. So if you have one take home this morning, that might be it. It's not going to make a stinker into a good deal. It's not going to take a building that we don't know what's really underneath this, or we don't understand but now someone's going to come running up and throwing money at you. It ain't going to happen. But if you have something that's a pretty good deal, but it just hasn't had a push to go over into, gee, it's now worth redeveloping it, or now worth bringing in an investor, this can be a great opportunity to make it go from good to great. Note that most of these are going to be real estate deals, just because the way the tax law is and has you've got to show the assets, so it's easier to show a real estate asset than it is someone buys a portion of my company. What's it really worth, and how do you show that? Where real estate's much easier. Remember, you're not going to get cash flow right off because it's meant to be a program that rewards patience. And then, so again, longer-term hold is rewarded. Couple things that are hold off and some enthusiasm. We're seeing in the Northeast, I've got some people here who can speak to it, hopefully during the Q&A. Rising construction costs are making even good deals tough because there's a shortage of construction crews and construction material is rising quickly. So even with this incentive for redevelopment projects that have construction costs make sure you're very careful about thinking about what those costs and timelines are versus what they might have been 2 or 3 years ago. And then, like all those TV ads that have the 8,000 words you can't read at the bottom, be cautious of what the tax thing is going because it's still being developed. So if you hear me or somebody say, oh yeah, you can do that today, obviously find somebody who is charging probably a whole lot more per hour than you paid to come here before you actually make a commitment to invest or to work with a fund. Okay, so that's my first introduction of the stuff. I'd be happy to take a couple questions now, but the idea now is we have a digital break. We can have you use part of it. Okay, so I guess, so everybody, you can answer your phone now. You can hit facilities. We'll take a couple minute break and we'll see you then. Thanks.
Chris and Bev, you want to come on up? Stu. Do you want to take a seat? All right, everybody, we're going to get going here in a second with your Q&A. Again, just a reminder that Stu's slides are on the Chamber website, so you'll be able to find them there. I should have said that early on because I saw a couple people snapping photos with their. No, sorry, Stu, they weren't. Have a seat right over here, Stu. Same microphone Peter Frampton used, probably, right? So, yeah, no kid. That's great. I just want to say, just an aside, when I walked, I have my UNH tie on today. You see that? My youngest is graduating Saturday, and that's my second. No. That's my second UNH graduate and my last, so that creates my own personal financial opportunity zone now that I've written the last. But I do want to say, and I hope you don't mind me embarrassing you, but Dr. Tim Butterfield and Sharon Butterfield are here, and they saw my tie, and they let me know they're celebrating their 50th anniversary of graduating from UNH. So congratulations. I want to say, many of you, like myself, I think I came to my first Derry Londonderry event, chamber event 20 years ago. And the energy and the passion and the value that I am seeing and that our company's receiving from the chamber right now under Heidi Morrison, but especially Ashley Hazeltine, is unbelievable. And they've done such a great job, so thank you for all you're doing, Ashley. Okay, so now it's your section, and you'll get to ask questions. I want to do an introduction. You've met Stu already. In the middle is Chris McCarthy. Chris is a real estate investor with Village Center Properties, has a lot of holdings in the local area. He's going to give us that private investment approach, or I should say perspective. And you all know Bev Donovan, the Economic Development Director for the town of Derry. And Bev, I'm telling you, so she's on the planning board in Salem. You should run for higher office. You always get an applause whenever you get introduced. So at this point, we'll turn it over to you folks. I'm going to start with one question, and I guess I'll start it with Chris from the private investment sector. And by the way, when you have a question, just raise your hand. Speak nice and loud. You don't have to grab a microphone. We'll pick it up, okay? And if folks can't hear it, I'll repeat it. So Chris, your thoughts, pros and cons as a private investor.
Well, just real quick, maybe just highlight my background. So I've been in the investment advisory business for over 20 some odd years, and I've been in investment in commercial investment properties personally for over the last 10 years or so, and most of that has been in the greater Derry area. I would echo some of the comments that Peter made. Bev and the town of Derry have been a fantastic place to invest. So I personally am very excited about this opportunity zone. I think it provides some great opportunities, hence the name, for investors, but also for the community. And Stu had mentioned kind of this greater good, a social good. There's a unique opportunity here to do something both from a financial standpoint that's very rewarding, but also really benefit the town. So from an investment standpoint, and Peter, more to your question, over the past 10 years, we have seen unprecedented economic growth. There are a lot of high net worth individuals, that's primarily who I work with, high net worth families that have significant capital gains. Going forward the next 5, 10, 15 years, if you look at public markets, alternative markets, the rate of return that a lot of these investors are expecting aren't quite as high, they aren't quite as robust. And it poses a problem. What do? They're sitting on significant capital gains. How do they redeploy those monies? the opportunity zone in real estate investing represents a tremendous opportunity for them. Having said that, and again, to Stu's earlier point, it all comes down to the numbers. So they want to make sure that they're still getting their required rate of returns. When I look at a project, can I still make money on this project? Costs have gone up, as was mentioned, construction costs, land costs, et cetera. Is the project still going to be profitable? There are still some questions, obviously, about the opportunity zone, investing through a fund, the rules and regulations that are required. But again, this can really be a pretty compelling, a compelling chance for investors here.
Bev, why don't you just make an introductory remark as well?
All right. So I have the pleasure of being in Derry at a really great time. The stars are kind of aligning. It's a great economy. We've got a lot of people that are interested in being in Derry. There are great projects happening all around us, both from the south at Tuscan to the west over at Woodmont. And then to the north in Manchester and, of course, the Seacoast area. So we're in a really great spot. And being right off of 93 and expecting a new exit is also generating a lot of interest. So I think the Opportunity Zone opportunity came along at a great time because it really has been a catalyst. And I think I was telling you a few minutes ago, I've been getting calls from investors as far away as Texas who are looking to place money from their funds. And that's really exciting. And it isn't just the large projects. I know Stu had talked about the larger cities, LA, Chicago, that kind of thing. But there are a lot of more regional developers that are looking here, and also a lot of small businesses, startups that can find an opportunity even in smaller parcels in our downtown area. And then, of course, with some of the zoning changes, we've got some large parcels over to the eastern border of the census tract. So really great time to be here, and I'm hoping that we can realize a lot of success because of it. And that's kind of it. I think we'll wait for questions, and I won't say any more.
Anybody have a question? Oh, right here. We'll get to you next, Tim. Go ahead.
One of the things that you don't say is opportunities on our timeline, like when you need to start it and when you need to finish, how the town going to work. It's really important to make it work. So you have 30 days from when you start the opportunity zone to get it done if you build something new. And zoning can be and planning can be something to be really started.
Yeah.
So the question's more, for everybody, the question's more on the time frames and the time limits. Stu, you want to take that?
Yeah, and I don't have my cheat sheet in front of me, so I'm going to have to. The deadlines are. Let's see. Yeah, there's a couple. There's one about you have to make the acquisition since 2017. So if you bought something in 2016 or 15 or 14, it's not eligible. You have a certain amount of period, I think it's like 6 months to, after you have the gain, to put it in a fund. And then the fund has a certain amount of period of time to invest it in a project. And that just got bumped up a little bit, is my understanding from reading the regs. So but it's like 30 months or something. And then I'm hearing people know more than I. So, yeah, there's the people that Chris is talking about who have established funds, and they're looking now because the sooner, number one, the investor's saying, by the way, you got to get it into something for me to get the break. And then the second thing is the longer they hold it before the you must pay date of 2023, I think it is, the better. So, but there's nothing that say that typical bank loan process, the zoning site plan thing will hold that up. If as I was saying earlier, it's a clean, it's a good deal. If it meets requirements, it's a good site plan review. If it's permittable, the town should not be. There's no reason why it would be the thing that would slow it down. I think it's a quality of the deal that's presented to the buyer that would be more likely the back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah, but the town needs to be walking, getting cool.
Go ahead, Bev. Why don't you take that?
Okay. So again, going back to the stars aligning, planning board, planning staff has been looking at all of the zones for the past over a year now, which is a good thing because we were already sort of in the mode of what would we do to enhance economic development in Derry. Now that this has come, it's been catalytic in that it's made us sort of look at it a little more quickly, a little more thoroughly, so that we can hopefully get some zoning changes passed in the short term, because what that will do is we'll open up the amount of people that might take advantage of the opportunity. The more things that we can do to be attractive, in other words, adding more uses or changing the way that we require parking. Those kind of things open up the possibility that more people would be interested. The trick is getting that done in a time frame that allows working backwards. I think what you're getting to is, from the end of this calendar year backwards, is it feasible to get a project done within that timeline? And certainly the more time that goes by while we're waiting for those changes, it tightens up that timeline. So to your point, I think that is an important thing, and we're working really hard at getting some things done.
Great. Thank you, Bev. Tim?
Stu, early on you mentioned something about an opportunity fund has to be 70 or 90% in the zone. And so where one's property might be bisected and 1/3 of it is out of the zone and 2/3 of it is in the zone, does that apply to that? I was unclear on that.
So the question for everybody who didn't hear it is if a property is partially in the opportunity zone, what are the implications? Stu, why don't you grab the mic?
I would do my best of dropping back 15 yards and punting. That is specifically one of the questions that I saw the IRS addressing in their last, what do you guys think? And I don't think they've decided that yet. I think it's leaning to saying, okay, we're going to look at the whole thing, but I do not think it's been absolutely yes yet. But that is one of the questions I saw in the most recent thing that said, and it's also with businesses. If a business is headquartered in a zone, but it has a branch office or it has distributorship, so they're dealing with some of those things as we speak.
Stu, I think Bev wants to weigh in on that too.
Thanks. We have another landowner that's experiencing very much the same thing, and he did get an opinion that how it would work is if 51% of it has to happen on 51% of the property, and there has to be a 70%, I think they said, improvement on that 51% of the property in order to be considered. But you would only be able to take advantage of the part that's on the property that's in the zone, but the entire property is considered. I know that's still fuzzy, and they're still waiting to tighten things up, but it's kind of an interesting thing because in that case, that makes you or helps you decide where do you put the parking versus the building.
Sure. James.
James Mayo with Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. I've had the opportunity to see Taylor Caswell speak a little bit about opportunity zones. Taylor Caswell is the commissioner for the Department of Business and Economic Affairs for the state of New Hampshire. And Taylor seems to be hinting at the idea that opportunity zones statewide can really be used as leverage for social benefits or community benefits. And I saw in your presentation, Stu, that you talked a little bit about community-sponsored funds as a fund type. I'm wondering if there's an underlying conversation going on about a community-type fund being established for Southern New Hampshire. This seems to be a theme of the discussion first, and then
Sure.
second, if there's a little more elaboration on what a community-type fund is.
Sure. I know that there is a state community fund that's being, actually Community Development Finance Authority, I believe, has contracted with a fund that has a lot of experience in doing affordable housing bond placements and such. And so when Katie spoke at our thing, that they have like a handshake with this fund to be one that they would hopefully be able to attract to do some community development stuff. I think what I was specifically or generally speaking of is there's nothing that keeps the people here from creating a fund. It's private. It's not going to be a government thing that says we want to focus on Southern Hampshire or we want to focus on Derry. So as some of the individuals that Chris is talking about are talking about where do I go to get my return on investment, one of the options is to say, well, let's keep it here. But it has to be through a qualified opportunity fund. It can't be, here, Chris, here's some money, go invest it. It's got to be through a fund, and the fund has to be the owner of the property or the equity holder of the business.
You good with that, James?
Yeah, I mean, just as a lead on to that, is there some competitive element to a community type fund that might attract an investor versus, say, a private investment fund?
Take a shot. I think, as I said earlier, I think there's going to be people who are 100% driven by numbers no matter what. There's going to be people who are driven by some numbers, but also the story, the impact, the social impact. And so I would think that, yeah, there's going to be people who are going to look for, I don't want to invest in a self-storage yard, so I want to make an impact.
Really no different, I guess, than a mutual fund that may have a socially responsible mission as opposed to just straight return. Please.
I've got two quick questions. One is, to some degree, you're talking about rolling the money over within a certain time frame, which kind of starts to get close to a 1031 conversation. With that, the money can't be taken by the seller of the property. It has to go to a qualified intermediary. Is there any requirement of that not touching the money as the seller of the property? Does it have to go to some other entity, or can it come to you and sit with you for 6 months and then you roll it into the new investment fund? And the second question is, you talked about funds and organized funds and all of this. Is this something that if I was selling a property, I could set up my own quote-unquote fund with legal documentation, and so now it's mine, and it's just my fund, and I'm going to invest in wherever that zone is?
Sure. So maybe I'll take the second portion of that.
I think I'm sorry, Chris, where you're seated, I think everybody got the gist of the question. So great, thank you.
So, and this maybe perhaps goes back to your question about a community one as well. So yes, it's fairly easy to set these up. You're self-certifying. So I've been in touch with my CPA, my tax attorney about structuring these. And yes, as a property owner, you can go ahead and do so. To your earlier point, no, you don't need the qualified intermediary that you would with a 1031 exchange. And the other benefit here is obviously you can use other assets. So with a 1031, I've got one investment property, I'm selling it, I'm giving the proceeds over to intermediary. I've got so long to identify properties and move them over. Here I have stock in Google that's, gone through the roof. I'm no longer as comfortable holding this Google position. I can use those proceeds, sell them, investing in this fund that's going to invest in either a business or an underlying real estate. And again, with the self-certification, et cetera, I can go ahead and do that on my own. I can set up the fund. I think it comes back to, from an investment standpoint and taking the social consideration out of it, is it a lot of hoops to jump through? Is it easier if there's a fund already established that I can go ahead, just invest my proceeds into? They're going to go ahead and invest in good projects that are already up and running or shovel ready. That obviously is a benefit. But it doesn't seem to be, from what I've gathered, and I have not yet established my own fund, it doesn't seem to be a very heavy lift to create your own and self-certify.
I want to follow up on that question because that was one I had, was 1031s, and there's a lot of bankers in the room, and I see Tom Terry's here from Bank of New England, does a lot of real estate financing as we do, and I'm seeing unprecedented demand for 1031s, people cashing out and looking for offsetting properties, and the challenge they have is finding a property to buy. It's easy to sell your property, take a big capital gain and try to offset it, and they're having a hard time. Do you see this threatening the demand for 1031s going forward as opportunity zones become more prevalent and understood?
I'm going to take a very small shot at that. When the Hinckley Allen, the tax attorney who spoke at the last one, he said, kind of in effect, why would you do it that way when you could do it this way? Because you can still sell the property as an opportunity fund and have a longer period before you have to reinvest and have a greater tax benefit. So, yes, he saw less interest in that, because if you could find the investment in a fund, in a zone, why would you?
Interesting. It's a development we're going to look to see. Yes?
Can you just touch on some of the other programs that could be utilized in an opportunity zone, such as the 79E program? So you're using a state-specific program with the opportunity zone?
I'll start if that's okay, Brian. Because this is pure private, it doesn't rule out anything that's already there. So if you are, I think if you're want to become more investor ready, you want to present them as strong of a reason to say yes and make it very hard to say no. And so to the degree that you can say, in addition to this tax benefit, here's help in permit assistance, we have access to the regional loan fund, we have the ability to do 79E, sorry to use that terminology, but it's a way of deferring additional property taxes if you restore a building in a village center. So you're not penalized for fixing up an older building, is basically what 79E does, which Derry has been pretty active in. So enterprise zones. So yeah, I think the more that packaging is done, Brian, and here's all of the reasons, and here's workforce, and here's schools, and here's you're welcome, and then yeah, I would package that together, and then make it clear that you're there to help if they need it.
Thank you. Please, yes.
Simple question. I'm sorry if I missed the answer earlier. Is there a minimum investment required or maximum amount allowed?
Not that I'm aware of. Obviously, transaction fees are going to bump up some of the lower ones, and transaction fees are going to encourage people go up here.
Right.
So, but I have not seen a dollar amount.
Yeah, and that's similar to tax-exempt bond financing. I mean, the fees sometimes, especially the legal fees to put that together, make certain projects just not really feasible for it, but there's no hard and fast floor or ceiling on it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Being we have such distinguished bankers in the audience.
Well, there are some people who say there are no such thing as distinguished bankers, but...
well, they'd say some things about... Never. Okay. How do you view this program for clients that are in a zone? What's it do to your thinking as far as your lending thinking?
Kyle Schneck, St. Mary's, I'll call on you to answer that. Nice and loud.
I mean, I honestly don't. I think it's a great incentive to talk to clients about. It's a difficult one, right? It's fairly new. We're still getting to learn it, to convey the benefits of this versus other options is a little challenging right now. But I think it's kind of back to your point about a good deal is a good deal and a bad deal is not so much. We're still going to look at it pretty similar as we would any deal. But I think ideally this is going to attract a different type of investor, more that social impact. So we start looking at things not just in terms of CRA credit, but also the opportunity to work with the town, perhaps in some other programs, utilizing some of the grant programs or things like that, that do make it overall a more attractive loan from the bank's perspective in the long run as well.
Yeah, and just to follow up, Stu, to Kyle's response, anything that positively impacts the value and marketability of a client's property is a good thing for a bank. The question is going to be, not for us, but for the appraisers. When a property is in an opportunity zone, what will appraisers do to try and adjust that value in such a way to show that? And I don't know that will be able to be quantified. That's something that will unfold, I think, as time goes on. So. Oh, nice and loud, if you could.
As we're just tailing off the same topic here, I think what I'm hearing is that 70% of the value invested has to come from some kind of capital gains sale, something up to 90%. So from a bank's perspective, are you only able to
Let me just answer yours and any other question that has to do with percentages that you heard today. Ignore them. Because we've already crossed over a couple topics by using the same numbers. The capital gain is one area, and that is 100% of a capital gain can go into a fund, and then the reductions of that personal gain are different percentages. I'm not going to say them again because we'll get in that path. The 90% number and the 70% come from requirements of the Qualified Opportunity Fund of what percentage of your assets must be in the fund. Because the statute says, not virtually all, but substantially all your assets have to be in a fund to qualify. And so IRS has come out and said 90% unless there are certain things happen at 70%. So ignore that stuff. The only issue is if you're going to set up a fund, buy products, buy either equity in a or real estate in a fund, and you're okay.
Yep. Oh, Joe. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Peter. I was wondering about the structure of these, and if you're selling to investors, is this regulated by the SEC at a certain amount of investors, a certain amount of money, or is it more like an LLC?
More of a question on structure.
I think I heard if you're selling a real estate to a fund. Is that your question, sir? Oh. Going back to the question here about social impact, we almost created one just to say we had one, but we figured we'd wait till everybody gets sugared out a little bit to see if there was some kind of social investment fund for this region.
But in terms of regulation,
right now,
Joe Friedman's question was: does this go through the SEC?
No, it's self-certifying, as Chris mentioned.
It is self-certifying. If you are going out to external investors, there are certain caps, and if you exceed those caps, you do have to go through the SEC. So it has to be a registered fund, or at least you have to go through SEC kind of component. So there are some considerations there. If you're going, let's say, and getting 99 external investors or something, you are going to hit various thresholds. But besides that, it would just be like an LLC creation.
Have they put the devil in the details yet?
I haven't seen anything, no. So I think it's just out of an abundance of caution. There are existing rules for existing, whether it be a hedge fund or a private equity fund. I think that you would use those rules, but I haven't seen anything specific on opportunity funds at this time.
That's a very good question, Joe. We have time for one or two more questions before I turn it over to Ashley to wrap it up. Yep, Carl Dubay.
Stu, did you draw that picture right there?
Do you like it? Yes. I bet I did.
No. Well, that picture is typical to people coming into our office to say, hey, I got a piece of land, I'm assembling a piece of land, we got to make this work, right? So all this stuff about Opportunity Zone is all good and everything. And that's an exact picture of when people come into our office and they're all talking. And then when we go to George and Elizabeth and Bev in town to say, we got a piece of land, we got to make something work. But you know what? We need 5 more units to make this work, the pro forma. We need 10,000 more square feet to make this work. We need a variance on parking. We need something to make it work because the investor doesn't care. They need to make this work. The pro forma needs to make it work. So they're all singing a song, all those people right there. I like your figure. They're singing a song, and you know what that song is? Well, it was sang on this stage a couple weeks ago. My favorite band, that's the Blues Brothers. And we're sitting back there, and they were rocking this place. This whole place was awesome. And the Blues Brothers were singing, I got everything I need, almost. I got everything I need, almost. You probably all know that song. But
sing it again, Carl. I missed that first part. No, I'm just kidding.
I got everything I need. Almost. And it's always that. It's a land investor. It could be an owner. It could be a developer. And it's almost. We need a little bit more to make this deal work. So I just want to say that in working in many towns, Derry has been very, very positive. So when we go and have our meetings, and they're all singing that song. See those little clouds there? They're singing that song. I got everything I need. Almost. But I can say that Derry has been very, very good. We go and meet with Elizabeth, George, Bev, and the people, but they're all great. But when we get to the boards, they don't care. What's your variance need? What is your hardship? Well, our hardship is we have to make the numbers work. They don't give a crap. So I guess what it comes down to is we need more communication to the boards. And if we're going to make an investor package work, we really need a variance. We need a waiver to make something sing for that investor and to make it work, or the project dies. But anyhow, I'd just like your thoughts on that.
Ashley wants me to say that's not necessarily the same opinion as the Derry Londonderry Chamber of Commerce. Go ahead, Stu.
One just small thing, because, but it's what makes this program a little different. What Chris said a couple minutes ago is he's dealing with people who are real human beings, who have been fortunate in their life to have some funds, and are either going to put it in a big fund or a little fund. But many of those would like to make a social impact along with getting the return on investment. And what an opportunity fund does, because it is a generous tax deferral and a tax break, is make those numbers a little bit better for things that are in the zone than they would be otherwise. So all else being the same zoning boards, same planning boards, whatever, it makes adding those numbers up a little easier to make it work.
Great. Stu, we're going to call it right there so I can leave a little time for Ashley to wrap it up. On behalf of everyone, a nice round of applause. Stu Arnett, Chris McCarthy, and Bev Donovan, thank you. On behalf of Enterprise Bank, thank you very much. And now we're going to turn it over to the president of the chamber, Ashley Hazeltine. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you again to our presenters. Thank you all for coming out this morning. Hopefully this was helpful information. I know personally, Heidi and myself at our office were getting calls wondering, can you tell me about opportunity zones? I have no idea. What should I come to this event? And our answer was, yes, come to the event because we're learning too. So this was helpful information. Stu is going to make sure that we have the current slides. We're going to get the information posted to our website, so feel free. It will be up there to be able to post and share. Also, Derry Community Access Media has been here recording it this morning. They are going to make it available as well. So thank you to DerryCAM. Also, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you are interested in making more connections in this area, please feel free to use this as a resource. Check out our website. It's on the back of the program. Would love to have you at another event. Thank you again, Tupelo, for hosting, and hopefully everyone has a great day.